Secret, page 103. Dwight Moody said this. He says 19 out of every 20 professed Christians are powerless. 19 out of 20, that's 5%. That means 95% of the Christians in your church, in my church, in the 45,000 Christian denominations are powerless. God's talking to his church, and he says, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, in the President of the United States, in the President of your General Conference. Cursed be the man that trusteth in man and makes flesh his arm. Your church isn't going to do it. The government's not going to do it. And whose heart departeth from the Lord. Will you let me in? That is the solution. Do not clasp hands with them. When you do this, the Lord is ashamed of you. Unfortunately, we never learn. Why is that? Well, that's a definition of insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over and achieving the same result. They keep pulling us in like quicksand, and we keep chasing them. And all the while, God has his hand out, wants to take us out of the quicksand of life and give us true life in and through him. He lives to empower us in the present. And few there be that find it, possess it, and live it. Why does Christ say only a few of the Christians find it? Because the Christian churches like us to think that everybody that attends their church has found it. Are you chasing the unrealized externals? The third myth that I chased was positions. That if I had a higher position than what I was at, that it would fulfill me, it would gratify me. And so when I thought I got that next promotion, then I'd be happy. Or if I could become the head elder and my wife the head deaconess of our church, then we would be satisfied. Or if I could own my own business, which I've owned 3 of them, then I'd be satisfied. There is always another then. What an honor it is to be able to share with you what has been lost in Eden, what God has been calling you and I to ever since Adam and Eve, in a perfect environment, walked away from the inner sanctum of being with God. So I take my thoughts from Revelation chapter 3, verse 20. Behold, God says, this is since the Adam and Eve lost it in the Garden of Eden. God is saying to you and I today, behold, I stand at your door, and I'm knocking at your door today, every moment throughout the day. If you will hear my voice and open that door, that's a choice that you and I have to make each and every day and throughout our day. If you will open the door, I will come into you. God says, I'll come into your heart, into your mind, into your soul, into your choices, and I will empower you. I will come into you and will commune with you. God's a communicating God, and you with me. So God is knocking at the door of his complacent church. That's you and I. That's the 45,000 denominations throughout the world. God is knocking at the door of the complacent church today, his stalled people. God is calling to you and me. Are we listening to him? At any time, we can open that door and enjoy intimate fellowship with God. So many of us are like the 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus. After the crucifixion, the 2 disciples were discouraged, and they're walking on the road to Emmaus, and Jesus was right by their side, and they didn't even recognize their Lord and Savior. And he was with them on their journey, wanting to comfort them, wanting to give them instruction, wanting to lift them up. and they never recognized him. Jesus was by their side and they knew it not. How can that be? Is that you? Is that me today? There is a balanced equation for letting him in. And it's found in Ephesians 2, verse 8. And I'll probably take a little bit different take on this than maybe you have understood in the past, but let's take a look at the equation so that we recognize his presence with us, that we're not like those disciples on their way to Emmaus. And God says, for by grace are you and I saved through faith, and not of ourselves. It is a gift of God. There's God's side in this equation, and there's man's side, your and my side. God always initiates. God is always there. That's why it is said in the Bible that God is the author and finisher of our faith. He initiates and he continues to initiate all the way till we enter into the kingdom of heaven. So God's part is to initiate to us what our need is in the moment. You and I are to cooperate by faith, and that's the equation. It's not complicated. Which thief on the cross are we? Remember, when Christ was dying, he was initiating to the two thieves on the cross. He wanted to take them into the kingdom with him. So God initiated to one thief and to the other thief. Only one thief responded. Which thief are we? Are we going to open that door of God's initiation? Or are we an amalgamation of those two thieves? That's what I believe we are. True faith always appropriates grace. Are you appropriating the grace of Jesus Christ in your daily life? Because he's always knocking, not at the beginning of the day, not at the end of the day, but all throughout our day. He's there knocking. Will we let him in and commune with him so that he can give us the instructions and the empowerment necessary for whatever you and I are facing? That's how we let him in daily, moment by moment. So on God's side of the equation, he fulfills his part 100%, 110% if there is a 110%. He's always there. He never fails us. He never leaves us, never forsakes us. On our side of the equation, we haven't fulfilled that, our side, have we? I don't know where you're at. Maybe you're 25% fulfillment or 50% or 100%. Where are you in it? If we were to take the average score or grade of all the Christians worldwide, what do you think it'd be? I don't even think it would make 50%. I really don't. And we wonder why God has not returned to claim his own. God knows we have replaced or substituted him with the 7 myths. And I want to take you through 7 myths. And I want to show you a picture of what Jim Hohnberger was at the beginning, because I have chased all 7 of these myths that I'm going to share with you. And I want to share with you a picture of when God was knocking at the door. And I wasn't listening. I wasn't letting him in. I was a party boy. I was chasing the world. So let me take you through the 7 myths. This is the picture of Sally and I when we were chasing these myths. And I only share that with you so you can understand where God is bringing me to. So myth number 1, possessions focused happiness. I just thought if I could have all these toys, I would be happy. So I'm going to take you back. I'm not taking you to all the possessions I've chased, but I'm going to take you back to the very first possession that I wanted. I just knew that if I had this brand new, and I apologize for the black and white picture, but in my day and age, there wasn't color film. There was only black and white. So the first myth that I chased at age 12, it was this red and chrome Schwinn bicycle. It had a headlight, had a horn, had a front and back carrier, and I believed that it would make me the happiest kid on the block. You want to know why? because it had 3 speeds. Honestly, the bicycles that I was raised with only had 1 speed, but this bike, Schwinn, came out with 3 speeds. Can you believe it? I was the proudest kid in the block, but the newness wore off, as it always does. And so now I was 19 years old, okay? And now instead of a red Schwinn bike, it was a red Pontiac convertible. And it was fast, it was sleek, it had an AM, FM radio, stereo radio at that, and it had leather seats and the prettiest girl at school, who I'm still married to today. I knew I had arrived, or so I thought. So then at age 23, it was a brand spanking new home. And that new home was 1,300 square feet and had 1.5 baths. And that half bath was off the master bedroom. We were making in the world. Sally and I, we were just the proudest kids there were. But it wore off. It wasn't enough. And then at age 27, it was a grand all-cedar log home in the country on 40 wooded park-like acres with a beautiful field. It had a swimming pond. It was on the dead end of a private, secluded road. Beautiful gardens and orchards, deer feeding in the field, grand fireplace, cathedral ceilings, sunken living room, elaborate furnishings and draperies. You know, friends, it never fails because it never satisfies you. Psalms in chapter 37, verse 16 says, "A little that a righteous man has is better than the riches of many wicked." And I was getting the riches, but I was not a righteous man. I did not have a righteous life. In fact, I knew little of a righteous life. But God was still whispering to me as we were chasing those riches. And he was saying, "Jim, I'm here for you right now. I'm your answer. Will you open the door of your heart and let me in?" So what is God saying to you? Are you chasing that myth? Because many Christians are. I'm not talking about the world now. I'm talking about Christians. The second myth was that people in popularity would make me happy. That if I was dependent upon the popularity of people, then I would have arrived. And for years, I strove for the recognition of my peer group. And then I strove for the recognition of my family. Then those that were in my field of occupation. And then it was my church. And then it was for the validation of other ministries that I was involved in. God is showing me just how empty all this is. And it is. When you strive for popularity and for people in your life, it's empty. My desire to belong, to fit in, to be looked up to has had to be surrendered continuously. And it is to this day. Remember that Adam and Eve bought into the devil's food cake, that something other than oneness with God will satisfy. And here they were, Adam and Eve, in a perfect environment. They had perfect health. They had a perfect occupation. They were perfectly suited for each other in a perfect state. They bought into the first lie. They bought into the first myth that happiness, joy, fulfillment comes from something yet unrealized in your life. So I chased the unrealized externals. Are you chasing the unrealized externals? The third myth that I chased was positions. That if I had a higher position than what I was at, that it would fulfill me, it would gratify me. And so when I thought I got that next promotion, then I'd be happy. Or if I could become the head elder and my wife the head deaconess of our church, then we would be satisfied. Or if I could own my own business, which I've owned 3 of them, then I'd be satisfied. There is always another then. It's a mirage, something that always escapes you. It's an illusion. It's a myth. We're told in Jeremiah chapter 45, verse 5, seekest thou great things for thyself? Seek them not. Jesus says, I'm your identity, not those myths. Colossians 2:10 says, you are complete in me. Finding that completeness is quite a journey. It's been quite a journey for Sally and I through going through all these myths and finding out that when you arrived in that myth, it was empty. It was like a vapor. It vanishes, and then you look for something else. So finding that completeness in Jesus Christ is a journey that we're all on. Where are you in this journey back to oneness with God? What percentage of that journey are you on? Maybe you start out in that journey and it's a narrow road, and it gets steep. Maybe you're 25% on the way in that journey, or 50% of your way, or 75%, you're becoming stalled, or you're taking an exit. My fourth myth was that places will satisfy me. After living in the city and having 2 brand new homes, I just knew that if I could move to the Rocky Mountains of Montana, up in the wilderness, looking at those beautiful peaks and living with all that beautiful wildlife, with the purest air and water on earth, then that place, that destination would satisfy me. Whatever it is that your heart is beckoning to live at, that is not going to be your fulfillment. If I could travel, I thought, to all 50 states, I would be fulfilled. And Sal and I have. We've been in all 50 of our states. Or if I could travel to the different countries in the world and see all the beauty and all the different cultures, then I would be satisfied. It didn't. We've been there. And it didn't satisfy. I'm reminded that Lucifer lost it in heaven, that Adam and Eve lost it in paradise. Because you see, when harmony with God is lost, nothing else can satisfy. That's what Adam and Eve lost in the Garden of Eden, harmony with God. And that's what God is trying to bring us all back to. And he's saying to you and I, let me in, please. I'm knocking at your doors. There's no handle on the outside of the door, only on the inside. You got to open it. God will never force his way in. He'll let you chase those myths so that you see how empty they are. But God is saying, I want harmony with you again. Will you let me in? But you and I believe that future want is our chief pursuit, that if I can just have the next myth. No, future want has become our chief pursuit. And we believe that if I can just enter into that next myth or enter deeper into the myth that I'm into, then I'll be satisfied. If that is a life hid with Christ and God, yes. When are we truly going to let him in? I have had to ask myself that question many times. Myth number 5. I look to politics for solutions and relief. If I could just get rid of those liberals in this country, then I knew our country would be better. Or those conservatives are such a nemesis to this country and such a nemesis to the church. If so-and-so was in the White House, then I knew this country would be restored back to order. Or if so-and-so was the General Conference president, then my church would have hope. You would think that the solution to the world's problems is dependent upon political correctness and action. It never is. Versus returning to oneness with God. That's the solution. That's what we're missing out on. That's what's not in place. It's insanity to try and reform society through governments. It cannot be done because whether conservative or liberal, all governments are unregenerate. And you cannot transform them. The whole history of the world shows that for the last 6,000 years. It is also insanity to try to reform a church. Now, please, Christians, listen up. You cannot reform a church. That's why, since the Jewish church, and then the Catholic Church, and then the Lutheran Church, and then the Episcopal Church, and then the Baptist Church, and the Methodist Church, and every church says, well, the former church wasn't enough. We got to start a new one. And now we got 45,000 denominations. Was it going to take 50,000 before Christ finally has his people let him in? If you could reform a church, Jesus would have done it. The gospel only reforms individuals, one-on-one with God. To be efficient, the cure, the gospel, must reach us individually and must regenerate my heart, one-on-one with God. That's the gospel of Jesus Christ. He can't do it with institutions. He can't do it with governments. He can only do it with you and me if we will let him in. That's why what is happening in your house, what's happening in my house, is more important than what's happening in the White House or in the general conference of your church. Political affiliation and legislation is never the solution. With my denomination, it started out with the Bible and the Bible only as our rule. Then they instituted a church manual to guide the church. And then the church manual increased. And then the church manual increased and increased. And it's getting to the point that it supersedes the scriptures. Are you listening? Do you see what's going on? Jeremiah 17:5. Thus saith the Lord. So God's talking to us. God's talking to his church. And he says, cursed be the man that trusteth in man. In the President of the United States. In the President of your General Conference. Cursed be the man that trusteth in man and makes flesh his arm. Your church isn't going to do it. The government's not going to do it. And whose heart departeth from the Lord. Will you let me in? That is the solution. Do not clasp hands with them. When you do this, the Lord is ashamed of you. Unfortunately, we never learn. Why is that? Well, that's a definition of insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over and achieving the same results. I received a phone call 2 weeks ago from a friend of mine. And he says, Jim, I don't think that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, will be the one that will usher in last day events. And he says, Jim, I'm looking at what's happening with the new pope that they just initiated. Do you want to know what my response was? I said, you and I, friend, are the ones that will usher in the last day events, not the pope and not the president of the United States. And he says, what are you saying, Jim? What I'm saying is this. When the character of God's people, that's you and I, that's his 144,000, when the character of God's people is perfectly reproduced in us, in you and I, that's the last great event. Then he will come to claim us as his own. When we truly let him in. Stop looking at the President of the United States. Stop looking at the new Pope. That isn't the issue for our days. You and I are the issue for our last days. When we let him in, when enough of us let him in, then he's going to return to claim us as his own, to claim his church. Those that let him in is his church. Myth number 6. This is a tough one. Pride. That's what broke out in heaven started this whole mess. Pride, lifting up of oneself. When will we understand that the greatest freedom is having nothing to prove to anyone at any time? That's freedom. We don't have to prove to our relatives, to our family, to our friends, to our church, to other ministries that we're important. We don't have to lift ourselves up. The greatest that ever lived, that Jesus Christ said, John the Baptist coined it. He said, he must increase. He, Jesus Christ, in me. And I must what? Decrease. Become less noticed. Lift up Jesus Christ in and through my life. That's John chapter 3, verse 30. He must, that's freedom. I don't have to prove anything. I just have to let the glory of God work in me and through me, and then give God the credit back. When the disciples finally learned that, then they could heal, because they never gave credit to themselves, only the power that was working in and through them. Matthew chapter 23, verse 12. And whosoever shall exalt himself, if the Pope, I was so appalled at how they exalted this man in his fancy robes and standing before him, how they're exalting him as though he's the answer to this world. He's a sinner just like you and I. Whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself, the President of the United States, shall be exalted. When are we going to learn that? This is a tough fit. Walking in the footsteps of Jesus Christ. That is what the popes that we make out today are supposed to do. And that is what the presidents of the countries are supposed to do. Walk in the footsteps of Jesus Christ. How are you doing so far with all these myths? How many of them have you bought into? I bought into all of them. Myth number 7. Prosperity. When I achieved that, I just knew that when I achieved that 6-figure income, then it's a 7-figure income, and now today it's an 8-figure income, then my problems will be behind me. Really? Money is the solution to our problems? You would think that money could solve all of our problems. No, it isn't the solution. If it were true, why have the richest men in the world all destroyed their own lives? In my day, it was Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe and Howard Hughes. And then the next step were the Michael Jacksons. They were not only the loneliest people on planet Earth, but they all ended up taking their own lives because they chased the 7 myths. The 7 myths will destroy you. Why don't we bring that up to the people that are chasing the fortunes of today? Let's take a look at the 3 richest men in the world today. And they've all chased the 7 externals and have achieved them. Bill Gates, divorced. What about Jeff Bezos? Divorced. What about Elon Musk? 3 wives. Now, I'm not condemning these men. I'm saying they chase the 7 and they can't put their own relationships together. Because to have a good marriage, you need Christ in you. So you sacrifice yourself for the benefit of the one that you love. And not just fill them with the 7 myths, but you fill them with a life filled with God, and they know that you love them and that you'll sacrifice yourself for them. So I said, I chased 7 myths. Well, to be honest with you, there's an 8th one. And the 8th myth is the most dangerous. It really is. I am appalled that people are looking to the popes of their churches. I'm appalled that they're looking to their churches rather than to the person of Jesus Christ. I'm appalled at Christians today that are looking at their church as the answer, or the pope of their church or the pope of the world as the answer to their problems. Most Christians have come close to their churches, and yet they're distant from God. Can I repeat that? Most Christians today have become close to their church, but they're distant from God. That's a foolish virgin experience. To venerate a man or a church is idolatry. And Christians are doing that today. We're told that for in him, the person of Jesus Christ, for in him we live and we move and we have our being. That's Acts 17:28. For in him, let him in. He's our power. He's our wisdom. He's our strength. He is the one who will tell us what our mission field. If that's our own family, then it's our family. If that's our churches, then it's our churches. If that's the mission field of the world or the rich men of the world, then he will instruct us in that. We are to return to that oneness with God lost in Eden. And what was lost? We closed God out. And Jesus Christ has had to return to show us the door back to God. And Jesus is that door. And he's knocking on it. He's knocking on your door every day, multiple times throughout the day. You're not going to find it in the eighth myth either. The wisest man that ever lived, Solomon, summarized it as follows: all is vanity and grasping for the wind. That's except for oneness with God. That's in the book of Ecclesiastes. Read it. He says it multiple times, all throughout the book. It's vanity. Vanity of vanities. It's grasping for the wind. You think you got it, and you don't have it. It's only found in a person. Jesus Christ in you. Jesus Christ in me. Here you will find empowered contentment. You'll find real peace. You'll find true joy. You'll find fulfillment amidst your walk on planet Earth. The human heart has no desire that God cannot satisfy. God can satisfy every desire of the human heart. That's why Colossians 2:10, you are complete in me, no matter your circumstances. John 1:4, in him was life. That's what we're looking for, to be restored to that life that was lost in the Garden of Eden. And the life was the light of men. It's hard to detach ourselves from the eight myths. Just ask these three richest young men in the world. And why do I pick on the richest young men? Because it was the rich young ruler that Christ came to Christ and said, what must I do to enter into the kingdom of heaven? And Christ says, give up on all the seven myths, or the eight myths too. And the rich young ruler walked away. Are you going to walk away when you understand the cost of finding true life again? It's hard to reattach ourselves to the indwelling Christ when we're involved in those eight myths, because they're like a suction. They keep pulling us in like quicksand, and we keep chasing them. And all the while, God has his hand out, wants to take us out of the quicksand of life and give us true life in and through him. He lives to empower us in the present. And few there be that find it, possess it, and live it. Why does Christ say only a few of the Christians find it? Because the Christian churches like us to think that everybody that attends their church has found it. Matthew 7, verse 13. Enter ye in at the strait gate. Jesus Christ is a strait gate. Not your institutional religion, not any of your myths. Jesus Christ is a strait gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. many of the people in the world and many people in the church are chasing the 8 myths. And then he says in verse 14, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Are you going to find it? Maybe you found some aspects of it, but haven't really found the authentic thing, which is Christ in you. Are you going to be part of the few that dare to bypass the 8 myths and truly find it? Dwight L. Moody, he was a great evangelist. You probably recognize his name. In the book, They Found the Secret, page 103, Dwight Moody said this. He says, 19 out of every 20 professed Christians are powerless. 19 out of 20, that's 5%. That means 95% of the Christians in your church, in my church, in the 45,000 Christian denominations are powerless. And they are. That's why Christ hasn't been able to return, because they won't let him in. That's where the power is. The power is Christ in you. The power is in Christ. It's not in an institutional religion. It's not in a lifestyle. It's not in the knowledge of your doctrines. It's in Christ in you. He is the life. 19 out of 20. So which one are you? The 95% or the 5%? Matthew 11:28. Christ is saying, come unto me. That's his invitation. It's only found in a person, not in any of the myths or in any church, but in an indwelling of Jesus Christ. What are you waiting for? Jesus says, Revelation 3:20, the last book of the Bible. He's looking out at his church, his people, the people that he wants to have them let him in. He says, I stand at your door. Jim Hohnberger, I'm standing at your door this morning. I'm knocking. Will you hear my voice? And it's a still small voice. Will you open that door? That's your choice. The door is your choice. And he gives everybody the power of choice. I will come into you then, and I will sup with you. In other words, God will give me advanced information that I need to carry out my day. He wants to commune with you. He wants to sup, is the word that's used. Jesus is waiting on us. So many of us are waiting on Jesus when Jesus is waiting on his church, his true people, his people that will dare to let him in. That's how you define who his church is, not by an institutional name, but by the people that honestly let him in, sup with him, and cooperate with him. That's his church. He wants to enter in so you can have inner solitude. He says, be still and know that I am your God, Psalms 49:10. Our greatest legacy is discovering the benefit of inner solitude with God. Jesus possessed that inner solitude with God continually. That was the secret to his power. Jesus came to live life as you and I have to live life. And the secret of that he always was in contact with his Father. It's our emancipation from the 8 myths. Will you allow God to emancipate you? Enoch did. He let God in so much that God just took him into the heavenly kingdom without seeing death. Noah did. In his day and age, they thought Noah was crazy. But Noah had inner solitude with God. That's how he knew he was supposed to build that big boat. His ark of safety. John the Baptist let him in. His own church, when God's denominated, instituted church, would have nothing to do with John. They hated the guy, but they were afraid to put their hand on him because the people respected him. John the Baptist let him in. That was the secret to these great men. Paul let him in. First, he was in God's first denominated church. Then God called Paul out of the instituted church and said, let me in. I will empower you to be the greatest evangelist the world has ever seen. They were all emancipated. And the church today is not emancipated. It is not. They all went beyond religion of their day. And you and I can as well. The secret place isn't a location. The secret place of Psalms 91 is not an institution. It's not a doctrine. It's not a lifestyle. It's an inner sanctuary, a true resting place with you and God, where God whispers to us according to his word, fully present with your God and your God-ordained thoughts. That's what God calls us to. Isaiah 30:20. And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee saying, Jim, I'm with you today. I have the solution. I have the power. I have the answers. I have the wisdom. I'll be your defense. Will you let me in? That's Psalms 91. The secret place of the Most High is the inner sanctuary that God wants to reside in you. You are to be the temple of the Lord. And our temples give honor back to God, not to ourselves. Resting in Jesus in everything and through everything. That was Elijah. When his church hated him, God put him by the brook Cherith for 3.5 years. Elijah didn't say, poor me, I don't have YouTube, I'm not on Facebook, I don't have the news. He had communion with God. That was Elijah. And he was so great, God took him in a fiery chariot back to heaven as an example of those of us that live in the last days, where you no longer crave constant noise. Elijah didn't crave constant noise. Moses, 40 years in the wilderness, didn't crave constant noise. They didn't need validation from any person, from any family, from any church group. They weren't involved in overactivity. I take my quiet evenings. That's how I begin my day. I begin my day by evening, because the evening and the morning were the first day. So I take my quiet evenings on my back porch, observing sundown and letting God in. So when I go to bed, my mind is rested. It's prepared. I know that God is with me in my sleeping and resting hours. And then my mind has time to sort through all the noise of what all of us face. And then early in the morning, my mind is refreshed. It's ready for time with God, time in his word, time in prayer. And then I go to my back porch and the sun's coming up. I get on my elliptical and I'm on my elliptical working out, getting refreshed. And I'm thinking about what I just read in God's word and what I just prayed about. And I'm letting God in. Do you do that? Or are you too busy for God? Most Christians are too busy for God. They're on the treadmill of life. No, God does not put you on the treadmill. How about you? Daniel let God in. Not just in the morning, but he let God in so much that that's what his enemies held against him. Because every noon, he'd go back up and open those shutters, look towards heaven and say, Lord, I'm still with you. Empower me to be your witness in Babylon. That was Daniel's secret. He let God in. All the mess that I shared with you is emptiness. the above is just as fulfilling as all the empty social parties I accustomed myself to in the past. Remember the picture I shared with you before I let God in? I wanted nothing to do with God. Probably because I didn't really know him. And I didn't know his word. And at this point in my life, I had never read God's word. So I have found that all the empty social parties that I was involved in, that I shared with you here, were empty. The beauty of inner solitude isn't in being alone, it's in feeling completely at peace with yourself and your constant companion. And that constant companion is Jesus Christ. I think of in the book of Daniel, not Daniel now, but the three worthies, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were worshiping their God. They were letting God in. And so the king in that day, Nebuchadnezzar, said, everybody must bow down to the idol of this world. And Shadrach and Meshach said, we're not going to bow down to the God of this world. And the king said, and then you're going to go into the burning fiery furnace. And he ordered his guards to heat it 7 times further. And this is the inner solitude that these three people had, that you and I are supposed to have when we stand before our burning fiery furnace. They said in Daniel chapter 3, verses 16 to 18, our God whom we serve, our God whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And he's able to burn you, to deliver you from whatever your furnace is that you're in presently. And if you will let him in, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, listen to the solitude that they have because they let God in. But if not, be it known unto you, O king, be it known unto you, O world, be it known unto you, O institutional church, that we will not serve thy gods nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. And the king threw him in. And the king looks in and he says, there's a fourth one, like the Son of God with them in their fiery furnace. That's letting him in. He will be with you if you will stand with him. If you will deny the 8 myths, if you will dare to stand alone with God, you will be a majority. No pressure to perform, no need to impress, just the gentle contentment of being exactly who God made you. There's a quiet kind of joy in realizing that your own company plus one is enough. That your own company plus one is enough. That was Noah. He was an oddity to the whole world. He was a laughing stock, building an ark in the middle of the desert when it never rained. Your own company plus one is enough. That happiness doesn't come from being surrounded by people and popularity. If your happiness comes from that, I know people that are the elders in their church and their happiness and joy comes from being looked up to in their church, or ministry leaders, because so many people watch them on TV, or they get so many clicks on their Facebook sites. No, there's only one click you need, and that's God's approval. And that possessions are not going to satisfy you, because there's always a bigger possession to get, a bigger boat. And being recognized at the top of your field is not going to satisfy you. Always proving your value. You don't have to go to a party and lift yourself up, or your possessions up, or what you've done up, or how much scripture you know. Living in that exceptional location will not do it for you. It didn't do it for Adam and Eve, and it didn't do it for Lucifer. Having a large bank account, I just shared with you the 3 richest men in the world, and their relationships are sour. Being politically aligned is not going to do it for you. Being active in God's last day church is not the answer. But from experiencing God in your daily life is enough. I'm becoming addicted to this kind of empowered contentment, producing real peace in my heart, producing true joy and oneness with God. I'm becoming addicted to it. This kind of inner solitude has a cleansing effect on putting one's finger on Jim Hohnberger's false dependencies and the camouflaging of my real condition. When I dared to move to the mountains and have that time with God for 30 years, it showed me what my false dependencies were. It showed me how I was camouflaging my real condition as the head elder of the church that I was involved in. So which one of the 8 myths owns you? Or should I say, which ones of the 8 myths owns you? Escape to God time will reveal it to you. That's why God sent Moses into the wilderness for 40 years. That's why God sent Saul, knocked him off his high horse, sent him into the wilderness of Damascus for 3 years. So we can understand and be still and know that he's our God, and that's all that we need. Time with God unmasks our masquerade. And that's what's going on in the Christian churches today. It's a masquerade. Time with God becomes a disruptor to all of that. And do we ever need it? I need it, and you need it. It is referred to in Psalms as the secret place, as I said earlier. And that secret place is this. Let me define it for you. It is a constant trust and surrender. That's what Adam and Eve had in the Garden of Eden. And when they gave up on that trust and surrender, they lost it. It is not only a constant trust and surrender, it is sustained by continual communion with God. That was the key to Jesus' life. He was always in contact with his Father. Every morning you found him out talking with his Father, and every evening. And it's appropriated by a living act of faith, obtained by a daily grace. I didn't say attained, obtained. It's there. You just have to rest in it. You just have to recognize that. That was Jesus. He lived like you and I have to live, whereby God is our reality. God is our joy. God is our peace. God is our shield. God is our defense, our answer in and through Jesus Christ. There is only one hope left for the world, and there is only one hope left for all the Christian denominations. That is an active and a robust returning to oneness with God that was lost in Eden. This calls upon us to be self-feeders. You and I are to be self-feeders. We are not to depend upon our Bible classes every week. We are not to depend upon the sermon every week. We're not to depend upon other ministries to feed us. We are to be self-feeders. Are you a self-feeder? And the answer is no, you're not. Because you're probably a foolish virgin. Or are you dependent on institutionalism? The goal of the Christian faith is not merely to have good theology, but to actually live out one's faith in the moment. That was Jesus Christ. He didn't depend upon the institutional church of his day. If he did, he couldn't have been our Savior. He depended upon God. Mere religion gives the appearance of following God. Notice I said appearance. Is it weekend visitations or full custody? Come on now. Is your Christian experience dependent upon weekend visitations? Or do you allow God full custody throughout the week? Is it fig leaf religion or family first fruit. We need to confront the fact that it was the most religious figures in Jesus' day who conspired to murder the very one sent of God. And that's true today too. That's why Christ hasn't returned. Are you living out your faith in the here and the now? If I came and lived in your home for 30 days, would I see you living out your faith in the here and now? Not simply studying the times till the last trumpet sounds. Have you lost your saltiness? 95% of the Christians have lost their saltiness, and our saltiness is the power of Christ living in us. That's what makes us the salt of the earth. Not our doctrines, not our institutions, not our lifestyle. It's Christ in us that makes us the salt of the earth. Or are you more like a domesticated religious kitten or the true Lion of Judah? Which one are you? A pussycat Christian, or are you the Lion of Judah? Jesus was the Lion of Judah. All of us need to stop playing church and be the church. That's what God's calling us to be. Will you be the church? The fact that evil is taking over on our and your church's watches is a litmus test that all we possess is mere religiosity. Did you catch that? The fact that evil in this world is taking over on our church's watches is the litmus test that all we have is mere religiosity. We don't have enough with 45,000 denominations to bring about the second coming of Christ. Hello? That's insanity. We've got to break from that and realize what the real problem is. We're not letting him in. Dare we put the finger on the very pulse of our true condition? That's what I'm attempting to do. Not just for you, but for me. A flimsy faith that has made its peace with lukewarmness and secularism. Is that you? A flimsy faith? Lukewarmness? Secularism in your life? Is that us? Yes, it is. We must stop attempting to cover our own nakedness with our fig leaf religion and our church cultures versus Christ in us, our only hope of glory. May God uncamouflage our substitutionary counterfeits and our religious pacifiers. No more drinking of the alphabet church's Kool-Aid. The Jewish church failed, and all the subsequent Christian churches have failed. All of them. The Amish have failed, the Baptists have failed, the Catholics have failed, the Episcopalians have failed, the Evangelicals have failed, the Lutherans have failed, the Methodists have failed, the Mennonites have failed, the Pentecostals have failed. My church has failed. Your church is failing. Why? Because they're not producing 144,000. That's why Jesus Christ cannot come back. They're only producing religious followers, a religious culture. They have all neglected the inner circle. Let us not forget that the Jews utterly failed to enter into the spiritual connection and oneness with their Messiah that Jesus came to bring them. And they crucified the Lord of glory, neglecting to fix the mixed up man. They neglected to fix up a man. They neglected to fix this mixed up man. The Jews did, and all these subsequent Christian churches are neglecting to fix the mixed up man, which is me and is you. And they're missing to fix up the mixed up marriages. Our marriages in the Christian churches are almost as bad as the world's. 85% of Christian marriages are a mess. They're just coexisting, tolerating each other. 85% were failing. And they're fixing up the disconnected families. Our churches, our youth today, are chasing the world. No power. no power. Not dealing with their own hearts, not dealing with their own marriages, not dealing with their own families, imbuing them with power, the power of God from on high. God is looking for a demonstration to say, not just here's Enoch, not just here's Noah, not just here's Elijah or Paul. God's looking for a demonstration of his people, his 144,000, his church that has let them in, and that their lives, their marriages, their families are well ordered. They're Christ-centered. And he can say, here is my church. I'm coming back and I'm taking them home with me. This is the order which Christ instituted and is frequently bypassed by all the denominations, neglecting it for some wider and more distant field, where their labors are frequently expended in vain. Will you cease from your slumbering condition and choose to become a star-like light for God? And let me close with this powerful statement in John chapter 1, verse 11 and 12. He came unto his own. Jesus Christ came unto his own, and he wants to come unto his own again. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. That's our condition today. He comes unto you and me every day, and we will not receive him. Not at the beginning of the day, not throughout our day, not at the end of the day. That's why the work on earth is not finished. He's coming unto his own, and his own will not receive him. But as many of us that will receive him, to them he will give us power to become the sons of God. We will let him in, and then he can come back and claim his church at his own. Will you please let him in?